The local hockey teams are just about 10% through the NHL season, so it's a good time to evaluate each club. So it's time for some hockey talk. We're going to chat about the Rangers, the Islanders, and the Devils with the host of NHL Today with Kasey Hudson on SportsGrid, the one and only Kasey Hudson. Case, what's going on?
Hello, Dexter. It's good, adjusting to the cold, because we all know that New York and Jersey is very new to me, so I'm in my winter gear, but 'tis the season, right? Hockey and holiday.
Well, it's the season of fall. It's not the season of winter.
Oh, it's winter.
Although my Floridian friend, is saying that it's already winter because it feels like winter to you, right?
Yes, my fingers are ice cold, and it is 54 degrees outside. I'm embarrassed saying it now, but either way, it's just... 'tis the season.
'Tis the season.
That's what I'm going with.
'Tis the season. We'll go with that, and you're going to adjust with it. Kasey, let's start by talking about the Rangers, right? Because they've played 8 games. They've got 13 points as a team, tied for the most in the conference with the Florida Panthers. Currently atop the Metro Division. So what do you make of how the Blue Shirts have looked through their first 8 contests this season?
So interesting that they're like toe-to-toe with the Panthers after the excitement that we got for playoffs. But one of the biggest standouts that I have to say when it comes to the Rangers is the two-way ability that we're seeing in their game. You're not just talking about the Rangers' second line. More importantly, it's the fact that the third line is almost matching the energy of their top line. And so that's kind of the key to a lot of their success right now. You have a third line that's not just holding off their opponents from scoring, but contributing to the scoring as well. 52 shots on goal, 8 goals, and that's not far off from their top line. It's 7 shots less than their top line. It's 1 goal less than their top line. Most importantly, they've allowed 0 goals. So Cooley and Hedel and Kakko, they have just become this formidable line for the Rangers, creating depth scoring and just creating a lot of opportunities for this offense to be a really scary offense to go against, but more importantly, a team that makes it hard to compete against them. So through 47 scoring chances, they have a lot of efficiency, and they're an extremely reliable line. And we've seen through a number of teams that get to that playoff position, they usually have 2 very strong lines. And we always talk about the top 6, but having that bottom 6 has actually been the theme these past couple of playoffs. For Vegas, their 4th line was equally as strong in a different way as their first line, and I think that the Rangers have set that up so far.
So far, but this is what fans want to see come the postseason, and we'll get to that a little bit later, is can that show when they get to the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, Alexis Lafreniere secured a new contract extension. How does this performance so far this season justify this investment by the Rangers, and that they're hoping in terms of how he'll add to their offense long term? Do you think the investment they made in him is justified here?
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like it kind of silences some of the question marks from the previous seasons. You know, when's that next step going to come? So for starters, 4 goals, 4 assists through 8 games. I'd say you're off to a hot start. But outside of that, I think there's a maturity to his game right now. Versus the opening game versus the Penguins, you saw him make this extremely patient goal. And that patience that he has, it's not hesitation. It's just great reads when he's in the offensive zone. And the reason why I think it's worth the investment moving forward with the Rangers is that it might be a little bit of a hot topic, but dumping the puck is becoming a harder situation just because of how the game is changing. And you don't just have speed, you have size. That's where the Panthers come in so strong. So with a guy like Lafreniere who can read the O-zone so well, he's going to create better zone entry opportunities, he's going to create better passing lanes, and he's going to find ways to score. He's leading the Rangers with shot attempts. He's really good with takeaways. He always has the puck on his stick. So he's kind of what I used to call in Tampa Bay, Brandon Hagel, a puck hound. He's a puck hound in his own way, and that's a guy worth investing in. Also, when they need a little bit of resurgence, when they need to break a stalemate, you see them kind of drop him to some other lines, and that's a factor of trust. So to be able to move him around, to be the energizer, to bring something to life, I think they found something in the kid. And what is he, 23 years old? Like, it's a perfect time to invest in him.
Right. He's still so young, and it's interesting because just 2 seasons ago, fans were wondering what's going to happen with his development. Is he going to figure it out? Last year looked like he did, and we've seen that progress. I assume you're excited about the future for him with this Ranger squad.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that, like I mentioned, I'm seeing a maturity. Being able to read the ice, being able to have that hockey IQ, it changes per guy and it changes per season. So you have to kind of find your own identity within a season, within the team. And I know that hockey's a team sport, but him knowing more and trusting himself, having that patience, having those reads, I think that that's something that's only going to develop and get stronger. And as long as they can maintain, you know, core pieces of this roster, he's going to be more in a leadership position before we know it. So I think it's worth the investment adjustment for sure. And I think also health is always a big factor, and helping the guys around you be confident. You and I talked about Kakko last time I was here.
Yeah.
And that third line, like Cooley's helping Kakko play more confidently, like creating rush opportunities. So you're just seeing it all translate top to bottom. So when you get a young guy like Lafreniere and you get him situated, you get that contract talk out of the way while he's feeling good about himself, I think it only goes up from there, health being on everybody's side.
Right. Health on the side will help, but that confidence can increase. He's secured the bag. He's playing well. He can also improve and play better. Now, while the Blue Shirts are in a good spot to start the season, right? They did face a tough reality check in their most recent loss to the team that bounced them out of the playoffs. You mentioned the Panthers. What were the major breakdowns in that game for the Rangers, and how can they address them moving forward in playing other opponents and also the next time they see the Panthers?
The hardest thing about playing the Panthers, for starters, is their tempo in first period. They come out such a high-tempo team, so they already overwhelm you to begin with their presence. But most importantly, top forechecking team in the league. So what they do so well is that they're able to get their opponents off the puck. But there's also kind of a bait-and-switch moment to it, because their forechecking is so aggressive that they tend to draw defensemen over. They draw over the sweaters of the opposing team. They create gaps on the ice in the offensive zone, and then they just completely end up being bullish in the middle of the ice or in the neutral zone. So their forechecking is a really hard thing to keep up with, but that tempo, not allowing it to get you out of your structure and out of your play. So while the Rangers can be a fast-paced team, there's going to be moments where they're going to have to slow down the game, where they're going to have to figure out how to force the Panthers into their structure, because the Panthers just have this wildfire, like Tasmanian way of attacking and going towards the net. And it's never the same consistency either all the time either. So it's slowing down the game to try to make sure that you're not getting out of your structure, you're not creating a bunch of gaps, because they have a lot of talent, not only through all four lines, but their deep pairings can get in on the scoring at any moment. Kulikov is tough, Forsling is tough. They just have so many good players. So it's making sure that you're marking your man, not creating those spaces, and slowing down the game versus the Panthers, rather than trying to match their tempo, in my personal opinion.
Right. That might not work for them trying to play at the same speed. I'm looking forward to that next matchup. I know the Ranger fans are as well, to see how they match up later in the season with the Panthers. Let's move on to the Islanders. 8 points for them through 8 games played. The team, they've been struggling to find consistent offense. What changes and or strategies could help the Isles become more of an offensive threat as they move forward through the season?
Yeah, so there's about 2 things that come to mind with this for me, because for starters, I want to say that the opportunities have been there. Perspective-wise, they've had just as many shots on goal as the Rangers and just as many scoring chances. 202 shots on goal, 182 scoring chances. You don't get those opportunities because you're not playing well. I think that setting up the attack is still pretty problematic. We saw a little bit of rhythm when Duclair got into the mix. I was excited about the addition of Duclair because Matthew Barzal, he's really good at creating passing lanes. He's really great at setting up passes, but somebody has to be able to match that pace and capitalize on the other side, and Duclair has the speed to do so. So I felt like we started to see a little synergy there, and then of course he ends up on LTIR. Outside of that though, there's no cadence, there's no rhythm, and there's really no chemistry with the Islanders right now. They only have one line that has stayed intact through all of their games, and that's Palmieri and Nelson and Suplikov, who's a rookie, for crying out loud. So that's a tough thing. They're throwing a bunch of players to the wall and just seeing what sticks, and there's no method to it. And that's not to speak on Patrick Wall, because I think he's brilliant. I think that he also has a relationship with the players that makes it easier for them to kind of talk through the game and figure out how to get everybody in the best role possible. But I have to say, this week, I watched the Islanders play on the Devils the other night, and then the news after the fact was that there was this whole hiccup between Wall and Lou. So the suits, I think, are getting in the way of the Islanders. There's a lot of talent on that roster. Last time we talked, I mentioned that Brock Nelson's still a 30-goal scorer.
Right.
So the talent is there. Anders Lee played a really great game this week. Barzal is obviously phenomenal. So the talent is there. But I think that the suits are getting in the way. Also, I think that they're just kind of a little confused on their roles. I remember when the Lightning had to play more defensively, and that just became the identity of the forwards as well, and they didn't know how to get into their stride to start being more offensively focused and stay in their lane. So there's just I guess confusion, I guess. They don't have an identity right now.
That brings me to where I wanted to kind of go next with them, because about their identity, because when you watch them, and it's tough, they appear to be committed to more of a defensive structure, if you want to say that, but maybe it's not that because of the struggles offensively. Do you think there's a balance between maintaining that identity and then trying to inject some more scoring punch? Because clearly they need to take advantage of these opportunities that they're having. The opportunities are there. They're not finding the back of the net. So how do they balance finding the identity that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think part of it's trust issues, honestly, because like kind of separating themselves from last year's woes. They got pinned in their own zone a lot last year, and there was obviously a number of plays where defense was not playing well in front of Sorokin or Varlamov. So I think that now they have this whole, we've got to protect the goalie. I mean, Barzal did an interview the other night talking about Sorokin's play, which he's been amazing coming back from back injury, and they felt like they let him down, which in some instances they have. So I think they're still kind of so attached to what went wrong last season where they weren't playing well in front of their goalies, and a lot of that started with defense, and they didn't make the moves to kind of build and bolster their blue line. And like I mentioned, kind of not to always reference Tampa Bay Lightning, but I watched it happen last year. The Lightning were trying to figure out what their D zone needed to look like, what their D coverage was going to be, and it forced a lot of our forwards to kind of have this identity crisis. They were forced to play a lot more defense, and we weren't getting scoring chances and opportunities. And I think that some of that is carrying over for the Isles. They did it a lot more last season. When I saw them this week versus the Devils, for starters, their size matchup with other teams is pretty ridiculous. I mean, between Mayfield, Romanov has been fantastic back there. So they already kind of have an advantage to push their opponent off the puck. But then after that, it's some turnovers. It's the setup. It's the passes to somebody who's not there. So there's just this disconnect, it seems, right now with the Islanders. And they've got to figure out what these lines are going to look like and how to solidify that. But again, it comes back to the suits. If Lou wants a guy on the line that Wall is not seeing, like, I don't know how you don't trust your coach to make that call, because they're with them day in and day out. And the coaches that can read their roster and know their players inside and out and know when they're a third-line guy or a first-line guy or where the opportunity lies, I don't think you can get in the way of that, because chemistry is chemistry.
That's what I was going to ask you, Case, about that, was what do you think that should be? Because even people who analyze the game, people who are in different front offices, they have different philosophies across different sports about, okay, should the front office get in there? Should Lou have a say? Should Patrick Waugh be the person? I tend to agree with you that the coaches are there in the day-to-day. They know what's going on with these teams. They see their players. They're talking to them, the good ones, that is, should be doing that. So, yeah, your feeling is that Patrick Waugh is a person that should be establishing this identity, talking to the players, getting them to figure this out, and trusting what they can do, what they can't do on the ice.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the decision-making needs to be between Patrick Waugh and his roster, because, again, he's right there in the front line, seeing how they're responding, seeing how, you know, there's such a mental battle to hockey. So who's going to know it better than the guy that's sitting on the bench with them day in and day out and figuring out, okay, this is what makes you tick. This is the player that gets you going. This is the guy who's got a good read on you. This is the one where you don't have to play with your head down, because if you're going through the zone with your head down, you're going to get smashed. And there's just all of these things that play into it, and your head coach. And the thing is, when Patrick Waugh came in, the excitement and the buy-in was there. So why would you even want to interrupt that, is my next thing. So I just feel like there's too much chaos going on from the top, which is just creating this identity crisis as a whole, because the talent is there, the opportunities are there, the scoring chances are there. When they played the Devils the other night, they were not pinned in their own zone. They were, in the whole first period, they were over in the offensive zone creating opportunities after opportunities, but then they let up a number of goals, and then they let teams back in games, and then of course that's a frustrating situation.
It is. They got to figure some things out. Good to talk about the Islanders. We're going to talk about the Devils now, because they've played the most games of the three local teams. With 11. They're second right now in the Metro Division. They have a new coach, Sheldon Keefe, this year. How is the team adjusting to his new leadership? Because we talked about the identity of the Islanders, but they have a new coach here with the Devils. What are you seeing in terms of the immediate effects or impact in terms of their style of play on the ice?
Yeah, I definitely think that the buy-in is there, and I think it's also a fun, fresh start for Sheldon Keefe. I mean, for starters, his first NHL run was with Toronto, and Toronto has a lot of star power, and we talk about the core four all the time, but when you translate that to what he's getting with the Devils, he has another young core that he's working with. So I feel like that translates very well. His ability to kind of bring the best game out of Marner and Matthews and these guys in Toronto, he did that throughout the regular season. So having that training camp with these guys, having these young guys to work with, and he runs a very fast system, fast transitions, fast pressures, and I think he's got the perfect roster for that. And the most exciting thing that I can think of is, like, you got Paul Cotter coming from Vegas. He was a fourth-line guy there. He's gotten second-line opportunities here, and he's been fantastic. I mean, I think he's sitting top 3 for points for the Devils. So you can see that the way that his fast system works for younger players with a lot of talent, he knows how to kind of continue to extract that skill out of them, that excitement out of them. You watch them play exciting hockey. Hasn't been that hot as of late, but still, I think that he's got a good system for young star players, and he's got the right veterans, around them as well. Stefan Nason has been fantastic, but coming from the Canes, he worked with young guys that were extremely skilled, so he has that leadership as well as that ability to contribute.
Yeah, so things have been going pretty good for the Devils in that regard in terms of adjusting to their new coach. But the Devils, they were considered by many a team that could bounce back, return to the playoffs this year. Do you think there's additional pressure on them to show quick adaptation to Keefe's system, right? And in your eyes, what do you think will be the most significant indicator of that progress for them in terms of trying to get back to the playoffs?
Yeah, no, the pressure's on for New Jersey for a number of reasons, because having some of the disruptive, exciting play that they had in the playoffs, no offense, Rangers, but being able to do that and then kind of falling short after that, and going through last season, you had Jack Hughes that was just, again, doing what Jack Hughes does so well, grabbing the points, helping his team steer for success, and then they just fall off because injuries became the plague of their roster. Then they go into the off season and they have one of the strongest off seasons. So now it's like, what's your excuse? You know what I mean? You plugged and played in the right places of your roster. You've got this new coach that can curtail for your core young superstars. So it feels like everything has lined up for them. So I will say that does add a lot of pressure, because it doesn't give you much room to say we still needed an acclimation period. I think they've taken away all avenues of an acclimation period for themselves, making the right moves to bolster their blue line and having the core healthy guys that they have. With that said, to answer the second part of your question, their D zone. Dougie Hamilton is fantastic, but he is not the answer to all questions and answers. And right now he's paired with Brandon Dillon, and honestly, they've let up the second most scoring chances in the league. So it's finding something outside of just one guy being your hero and your defensive structure. And I'm sure Brandon Dillon has been great. He'll get there. There's a number of guys that can help out and contribute in that aspect, but I think that their defensive zone is probably going to be their biggest question mark, because the turnovers, the scoring chances that they let up, you're going to work against your high-power offense if you cannot man down your zone. And we've kind of talking back to the Isles. You don't want to put them in a defensive mindset when they need to be able to equally defend as well as attack.
As well as attack. And that was something the Devils wanted to clean up heading into this year. They want to be better in that defensive zone. We'll see if they can do that going forward. Real quick, before I let you go, I just want to ask you about around the league. Thus far, we're about a 10th through the season. Has there been any team that surprised you that you've really liked outside of the three local teams, because we had talked enough about them? But has there been a team in the NHL that surprised you thus far with this start?
I know everyone's waiting for me to talk about Tampa Bay more. So, of course, I make my little nerd list in the beginning of the season, teams to watch. And, by underdogs, I don't mean, I think they're going to come in and go to the Eastern Conference Final. But Montreal has been on my list. I was really impressed with them last season, because they're one of these teams that just consistently can generate rush after rush after rush. And being able to create odd man rushes and have the speed that they do and some exciting scorers that they do, I was very curious as to what they were going to bring into this season. And I feel like they were able to compete more this season. They were able to draw that from last season, bring it into this year, and have 6 formidable players to go against. And their goaltending has just been an epic surprise as well. So I just love those teams that kind of fly under the radar. And Marty St. Louis, he's just, of course, I'm going to have a love and gravitation to him from being a former Lightning player to the way that he's running this team. And I just have such respect for what they're doing. He's playing the long game. He's not making moves for instant gratification here. He's making sure he brings in the right pieces to have this team buy in and find success in the next 3 seasons. And I feel like they're well on their way, because they've put up some pretty good games, some pretty good points. And Cole Caulfield, keep scoring, bud. Keep scoring.
All right, got the Canadians on their way, so keep your eye on them. That is Kasey Hudson, the host of NHL Today with Kasey Hudson on SportsGrid. The puck drops on that. I was going to say tips off. The puck drops on that
there you go.
On November 2nd. Could you talk to people a little about what they can expect on the show? Seeing you, I'm excited to see you on the show.
Oh, I'm so excited. I have to make sure that I don't get too unhinged. But NHL Today on SportsGrid TV, we'll be running through, top snipers of the week and my favorite plays of the week, and of course all the hockey puns you can think of. But most importantly, if you guys do follow me on social, I do my favorite NHL plays of the day, and I'm just always posting it. And I like to highlight, players that don't get much love, or not always the superstar guys too. So I wanted to have a space in the betting space, but I also wanted to create space for newer fans or people that are interested in hockey but just haven't felt like, they know enough about it. So it's just going to be all encompassing. I'll have my Kasey's Power Play where I break down different betting tips or reasons to love hockey, and then we'll have the hockey betting stuff, and we'll have some great guests on too. So I'm very excited.
Now, it's going to be great. Kasey is one of the best voices around the NHL. I always love talking some hockey with you. So please check out Kasey on SportsGrid and the new show, NHL Today with Kasey Hudson. That is the great Kasey Hudson. I'm Dexter Henry signing off for some more great hockey talk that we had, talking about 3 local teams, and we'll see how they do down the road in the rest of this NHL season.